Hey.
Hello. Okay, good. I've got my Phoenicia logo. I also have the presentation ready, so should be good.
Hi, I'm here already. I'm just setting up my extension wire.
Okay, no problem. And I haven't started sharing, so I should be good. I'm gonna just make sure that my work email is off. I guess I'm talking on mute. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, you can hear me. So I just opened up the poll, and while we're waiting for everybody to join, if you could just take a minute to fill out the poll. And also, if you have a chance, if you haven't done so already, go to our Phoenicia page and click like and follow so you can stay up to date on what we're doing. And then also, when you have a chance, go to our website at www.phoenixiafoundation.org and check out our resources page, because we have a lot of great information there and links to things that you might find helpful. So we'll start here in about 8 minutes. Thanks. Okay, we are now recording and we are now live on Facebook. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I'm Lisa Valerio and I'm the founder of the Phoenixia Foundation, and we are here this evening to put on a webinar for all of you on what's next for my adolescent with special needs. And we have with us, we have Lonnie Hessen, we have Vanessa Ibanez, and we have Rafi Garcia, who's going to be presenting. And Lonnie will be actually helping manage behind the scenes, and myself answering questions as they come in. We have created a poll for those of you who are just joining, if you can make sure to complete the poll. And then also if you could ask your questions in the Q&A component of the webinar in Zoom. And those of you who may be on Facebook, if you could just post those questions, and we will afterwards, if we can't get to them during the webinar, we will do our best to follow up with you after. I also wanted to just let everybody know that we will be sending out a certificate for those of you who have registered on Zoom. So after the webinar, which will be within 2 to 3 days, you will receive a link to your certificate. So please, no need to ask any questions about the certificate. We will make sure that everybody receives their certificate if you have registered on Zoom. Those of you who are just watching on Facebook, we don't have a way to be able to send those to you. So in order for you to receive that certificate, you have to have registered through Zoom. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lonnie. I'm gonna let Lonnie give you a little bit of background about Phoenixia and about herself, and then we'll have her hand it over to our two folks who will be speaking to us this evening on our topic of what's next for adolescents with special needs.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everybody. My name is Lonnie Hessen, and I am an occupational therapist and the co-founder of Phoenixia Foundation with Lisa. We are so delighted that you're joining us on Wednesdays for our webinars. It's been so much fun, and we're really excited for this evening's topic. The Phoenixia Foundation is absolutely dedicated to helping families with kids with special needs thrive, and we would love to be doing in-person outreach with all of you right now, but since we are limited in our face-to-face, we will provide our mission virtually via these webinars until we can get to you again. So with that, I would like to introduce Rafi and Van, who are both of our presenters this evening. I will be, as Lisa mentioned, answering questions about the content in the Q&A. So if you have questions as Rafi and Vanessa are presenting, please feel free to ask them in that Q&A and I will write back to you. All right, thanks everybody. And Rafi?
Hi, Rafi Garcia again. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist at KidSpace. And I'll be presenting in conjunction with Vanessa, who I'm actually pretty anxious to hear about and also to learn from, especially with just this population that we work with, but from the perspective of the Philippines, because it's vastly different from America. Vanessa?
Hi, good morning. I am Vanessa Ibanez. I am a volunteer of Phoenicia Foundation and also an occupational therapist and co-founder of TerraCare in Davao City. So I'm excited. Shall we start? Okay. Okay, next slide, Lisa, please. Okay, so this will be our discussion guide. So our discussion guide will be divided into 5 sections, but it's generally telling you a story of actual real people that we have seen in our practice, Rafi and I. So maybe when we are hoping that as we tell their story, you will pick up something from what we did and maybe apply them to your children. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the story of Albert. Okay, Albert is an 18-year-old man diagnosed with autism. He finished grade 6 in a regular school, attended SPED before he was placed in a regular setting. In first year of high school, that's when the time I saw him for therapy, he didn't want to attend high school anymore. He would like to be a church pastor for the youth. He also is a member of a church band, and he would also like to be a waiter. So he is bothered with bullying and begins to ask why his friends in church are not following what the Bible says. So he also likes to go to the mall with his friends, watch movies without mom. But this idea scares the mom a lot. And then he is also curious about having a girlfriend and would like to have a date. So then, next slide. At this stage, Albert is Albert is already a young man. So for people without diagnosis, they are expected to really develop the ability to think abstractly. That's why he's already comparing what the Bible says from what he sees, from the behavior of his friends. And then he's also concerned with philosophy, politics, social issues, things long terms, like he wants to be a pastor in the future or want to be a waiter. He sets goals. He compare himself to his peers. He wanted independence from his parents. Okay, and of course, peer influence and acceptance from others becomes very important. Curious about romantic relationship and may have romantic or sexual relationship, maybe in love, and may have long-term commitment. But for persons with autism like Albert moms is dead scared about the acceptance of the fact that that her young man is already going through this stage. Next slide, please. So if you are a parent or a teacher of an adolescent with special needs, sometimes you kind of miss out that the changes that they go through. Sometimes we see them as a forever child, like forever dependent child. So it's normal for us to get confused, or normal for you to get confused on what to do, where to go, what issues to address first, what concerns to address first, and how to go about their choices. Okay. And then our next story is Stephanie. Stephanie is a 15-year-old girl diagnosed with Down syndrome. She belongs to a SPED class of, in the Philippines, right? We usually in a SPED class, all the children with the same diagnosis are grouped together, and then it's common that we see children grouped by diagnosis, and then it doesn't matter the age of their age bracket. So sometimes they're all mixed into one class. So for Stephanie, she belongs to a class of children and adults and adolescents with ages 5 to 30 years old. So imagine that. She is assisted by her mother in all self-care. Example, eating, dressing, toileting, bathing, and brushing teeth. Actually, she is dependent in all areas. And when I asked the mom, what are your goals? Her goal was, I want her to write her name. I want her to be cooperative in school activities. But when I asked, what type of school activities are they doing? So it seemed like a preschool-like activities, like they're expected to do coloring, tracing. So, okay, for the next slide. Okay. Stephanie, I can see that she really need to improve on self-care, especially hygiene. I can smell her body odor. She appeared untidy. And then the mother works as a street sweeper and doing her best for Stephanie. But she was more focused on academics when in fact Stephanie is dependent in all self-care and growing and going through different stages of like this one, like breast development. She has menstruation already, she has pubic hair already, and their focus is school tasks. Okay, so obviously, next slide. Obviously, this mother is unaware on what to focus on as her exposure in the school setting is just academics. So Stephanie belonged to a class, to the same class every year with varied younger or older age group. And the mother was unable to see beyond the preschool-like demands at school. So Stephanie is already a teenager, and I have to educate her mother that she needed to prioritize self-care. It was hard to convince her at first, but when I asked her, who will take care of Stephanie when you pass, when you die? She said, siblings. The siblings will take care of her. I asked her, are you sure that the siblings will take care of her the way you take care of her? You are the mother and you are, of course, willing to sacrifice everything for her. But the siblings, they will soon have to take care of their own children too. So have you considered that? And she is also a girl. She is vulnerable to sexual predators. So Stephanie is so used to her mom and another adult cleaning after her after toileting and touching her vagina when taking a bath. So when someone molests her, she wouldn't know the difference. Okay, so I might be harsh to the mom at that time, but I felt like it's time to wake her up. So for the next case, Rafi will tell us his story.
Hello. So my story begins with my friend or former client. His name is Joe. Same thing on the autism spectrum, but high functioning. He also attended a special education classroom from elementary to middle school. And then I'll talk a little bit in high school in the next slide. But he's mostly independent in most self-care tasks and assists with his in-home management tasks at home. So he does some sweeping, mopping, helps mom clean the windows, prep some food. After elementary, mom told me that she didn't know what was next because she was afraid that in middle school and then going on to high school, Joe would get bullied. And that is that does happen. Kids can be mean. Kids can be mean. But as they navigated through the school system, they found some great support through school counselors and teachers. And so the bullying was pretty minimal. They, at some point during their middle school, they did have to pull him out of one school and transition into another school because they had a hard time supporting Joe and his needs at that school. And sometimes that happens. Kids will be okay in school for a certain amount of time, but sometimes the school, the kids' behaviors might exceed what the school is prepared for. And so the school staff, unfortunately had to tell family this, I don't think this is the right placement for Joe's academics and life skills. So they had to find another school for him that was good, and that's okay. Finding the right school for your kid is very important because it will allow them to thrive and also learn academic and life skills. So if your kid is in the right environment, that's going to do a lot of things, not only for their behavior, but also for their learning. Next slide. So let me talk a little bit more about him in high school. So the status of his health, throughout high school, he had low endurance and decreased strength. So he was pretty skinny and fatigued pretty quickly. He didn't like to do that many activity stuff. And he also had a certain amount of foods that he would only eat. So I remember him only eating lots of chicken nuggets and French fries. That was his thing. So chicken nuggets in the morning, chicken nuggets for lunch, chicken nuggets for dinner time, and water and soda. He loved those things. So obviously that would contribute to, his low endurance decreasing. Some healthy habits that he did have was he did love to read. He loved comic books. So he loved learning about superheroes and loved learning about good versus evil. And it led to lots of great discussions of why people do certain things, why don't they do certain things. He helps his family with chores, and then for his sleep, he was actually a pretty good sleeper. He slept throughout the night with a weighted blanket. And so a weighted blanket was just a heavy blanket that was 10 pounds, and that helped settle his nerves down when he would sleep. Next slide. Next slide. So as Vanessa mentioned, as Joe grew up, he obviously experienced puberty with some changes. He got pubic hair. And one of the things that we did a lot with this family was educate them on how autism, just because you have autism, that doesn't affect when puberty starts. Everybody experiences puberty. So Joe needed a lot of preparation and time to understand his changes. So what we did was we created an All About Me book. And so with the family, we found photos of him when he was a baby and showed, we made a book showing him, how he grew up, how he got taller, how he had more hair, how he had longer body parts, longer arms, legs. So we were demonstrating him, as you keep growing, things are going to change. And we also had to emphasize how physical and sexual changes are also a natural part of growing up. We're all human, so we all experience these things. Just because we have a diagnosis doesn't mean that we don't experience any physical or sexual changes. It's all part of life. And so the more we can educate our families and our kids about these changes, the more empowered they're going to feel and the more comfortable they're going to be in their bodies. Because nobody likes to live life uncomfortable and confused at why do I have hair under my armpits? Why do I have this beard when nobody does? So the more we can educate our teens during these changes, the more benefit it's going to be for them, their families, and the communities they live in. Next slide. So with these changes, we made this thing called social stories. And social stories are kind of like a PowerPoint or a simple picture book. And so our topics that we covered were erections, wet dreams, and masturbation. And so we kept it simple. So I'll give you an example of a social story we did later on down the slide. But the biggest thing that we had to work on is being patient because our kiddos, who are on the autism spectrum, take a long time to process and understand things. So we had to read this book, several times of this is what happens when XYZ happens. So they needed lots of extra time and support to understand. So I know that's huge in being patient. It's a lot of practice. But again, the more you can be patient and the more you can just educate them and show them that it's okay to experience these changes and not tell them, sexual or physical changes are bad. That's going to decrease their anxiety and move them onto adulthood so that they can be productive citizens in our communities and families. Next slide. So here's our example, and the picture below is obviously a different picture that doesn't pertain to this story. I obviously couldn't put the pictures that we did take. But anyways, here's a quick example. So I'll start it off. When I'm sleeping, I might have a dream. When I wake up, my sheets might be sticky and wet. This is called a wet dream. So after this sentence, we put a picture, of a bed and I think like a little puddle on the sheets. And then he would flip to the next page. When I have a wet dream, I should always wash my testicles and penis when I wake up. So for this one, we had a cartoon picture of somebody, taking a shower. And then for the last sentence, we put wet dreams can happen to lots of boys. And it can, it's part of life and part of our physical changes that come with it. Let me see, what else do I have here? Next slide. Let me go back one more again. One more slide. There you go. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about male sexuality. So as I said before, sexual changes are part of growing up, and it is up to us, the adults, to educate our teenagers and what is appropriate and what is not, or what is appropriate and what's inappropriate, without any stigma, because our teens with ASD already have a hard time processing and understanding the world we live in. It may be an uncomfortable topic, to discuss, but we need to do it for the benefit of our sons and the community. So I had this conversation with Joe, and I approached it from a scientific and societal perspective. So what I said to him was, your body's going through changes and you will experience sensations and urges. At home, you can masturbate in your bathroom with the door closed. It is okay. In public or in school, you cannot masturbate or touch someone inappropriately. That is not okay. And so we worked with the family to create a plan to support Joe through these changes. And so we did, like I said, we did lots of social stories so he would understand when it was okay to do certain things and when it wasn't okay to do certain things. And the question that you might have right now is, well, what is normal sexuality? And that is a great question and, a complicated answer. So I'll give my perspective. If your teen's behaviors, such as, if they're exposing themselves in public or touching, rubbing people inappropriately, are having an impact on their lives and those around them, then we need to spend time educating our teen and possibly seek out support. I don't know what normal is because we're humans and we as humans do, weird things. So what may be normal for me is probably, not normal for you. What's normal for you might be different for somebody else. So the biggest thing I can say is if it impacts your child's life and it's impacting his relationships and, your family's relationships and the way you interact with other people, then I would seek support and seek some help to get education and see, well, why is this behavior happening? Because the behavior could be a form of communication. And so the more we understand that behavior, we can address it and find a positive way, to help Joe and help our teens express their communication and behaviors. And to end it, the more you educate your teen on sexuality, the better prepared they are as adults to live in our communities. Next slide. So as Vanessa said, please take the time to answer the following questions of, how old is your child right now? Whether just because they're 15 chronologically doesn't mean they're 15 cognitively. So you have to see where they are on the development scale. If they're 17, they might be 13 or they might be 10 or 11. So you have to figure out where they lie so that you can best educate them on why their bodies are changing the way they do. Another question that you also want to ask is, what do you want your child to be able to do when they reach this age? Maybe handwriting was a goal back in the day, but now maybe it's more important to be participating in household chores or maybe doing, some jobs around the community. Because the more integrated they are in the community and carrying out those functional skills, the better prepared they are for independence. How will you help your child achieve their, hold on, my computer is acting up. How will you help your child achieve, your dreams for them? That's always a hard one because, we may have all these dreams and aspirations and goals for our kids, but it may not align with their dreams and goals and maybe the ultimate goal in the end. So we have to find the fine line of, how can we, achieve those goals without compromising certain things. And then as I said before, is your dreams aligned with your child's dreams? And that's always the hardest, is having the parents realize that, what you want may not be what they want. And it's always very important to listen to your kids and see, what it is that they want, because it can be very different. And they may not be motivated to do what you want. And the more motivated they are to do what they want to do, then obviously they're going to be better prepared for lots of things and open doors to lots more opportunities that they want. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. Vanessa.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Rafi, for such a wonderful input regarding the what males go through at this stage, and allowing parents to think about what they want their children to be able to do when they're older, and considering their dreams. So in additional to what Rafi has said, these are examples of activities or skills that you may want your children to train You may want to train your children. So these are practical and necessary for survival rather than just focusing on just academics. So these skills may help your adolescent become more productive individuals. So example, getting their own snacks rather than serving them all the time. Start young, of course, but it's never too late to start now. If your child now is 13 and you haven't really taught them how to serve themselves and they're so used to, being served, so maybe it's time now to consider to train them meal preparation skills, clean up, community mobility, health management, and maintenance. For example, just including the routine of taking their vitamins, their medications, especially during adolescence. There are some adolescents who develop health problems when they are older. For example, seizure. I've met a lot of kids that I've seen before. They have autism, and then when they become adolescents, like 13, 14, 15 years old, they now have seizure. So they have to be taking medications all the time. So these are important survival skills that they need. So next slide, please. Okay, so let me remind you of Stephanie. So this is what we did with Stephanie. So I made sure to guide the mom of Stephanie, that she has participation in all areas of occupation. So may it be partial, that's all right. Partial participation, that's all right. She doesn't have to be completely independent as long as she has a part rather than being totally dependent at everything. So why is it important? As an OT, health is not just, we define health as not just the absence of a medical condition. It is one's capability to participate in things that he is expected to do, want to do, and needed to do. And self-care or activities of daily living is a need to do for survival. So imagine, how can it be easier for the person to take care of them if they can at least participate in dressing, bathing, brushing teeth, toileting. For example, the activity of taking a shower or bathing, it has 5 steps: wet, body, shampoo, soap, and then rinse off the soap, then towel dry. So that's 5 steps in summary. So how nice could it be if Stephanie can do step 1, 4, and 5, right? So she has skills, she can participate, and believe me, if an adolescent can participate even partially, they get to feel good about themselves and they have something to be proud of. So I know parents can be busy, like Stephanie's mom. She's a street sweeper, she's tired, she needs to go out of the house very early in the morning. She's very busy. Now, parents would like to, get it over and done with. So I asked Stephanie's mom to teach her. So if it takes 5 minutes to give her a bath, it will take 10 minutes to give her a bath and teach her at the same time. So sometimes you really have to put numbers to encourage them. Now, it's double the time. It's not that long. So I told the mom to do handover activities. Stephanie is unable to imitate. She has poor frustration tolerance and poor attention. So demonstrating to her and letting her imitate will not work. So I asked the mom to do handover and assistance, be consistent with the sequence, and make sure that her hand, Stephanie's hand, is touching her body and not the mother's hand, especially when cleaning up the private part. So it will take more time, but do this every day. I'm happy to say that after a year, she finally was able to clean her private part by herself. So of all the steps in bathing for a year, doing it every day, because the skills of Stephanie is, her ability to learn is not that high. So it really is, it takes a lot of time to teach her a specific skill. So yon. Some parents wish that their child can pass ahead of them. This is a heartbreaking wish, because they are worried who will take care of their child with special needs. So when they become adults or when the parents are gone. So this wish might be granted, but can you really watch over your child 24/7? That's my question for you. So what if there's a sexual predator? If you're female or male, even male adolescent, is used to other people touching their private parts, uh, they would not know the difference if a sexual predator touched their private part. So by teaching them to clean or wash their private part and not allow anyone, even you as the mother, touch it, it is actually helping them to prevent future sexual assault. So help your child combat future abuses. So it may not be sexual. The abuse may come in different forms. For example, feeding. As a parent, you feed your child three or five times a day. The question is, what if the caregiver will not feed your child? So maybe feed her once or not at all. Forgot to feed your child. So since your adolescent doesn't know how to get food and feed themselves, you are setting up the stage for abuse, okay, for neglect. So you might say, oh, the sibling might not do that. Wait, are you sure that the sibling will be hands-on in taking care of your adolescent with special needs when you're gone? What if the sibling hired a caregiver or a relative stepped into the role of taking care of your adolescent with special needs? So we don't know what might happen. So please think about that. Equip your child and please start training as early as you can. Don't wait for the child to turn to teenage years before starting. Okay, next slide. Other than the activities of daily living or self-care, we also focus on teaching teaching Stephanie other survival skills like preparing a meal. Stephanie might not be able to cook, but at least can open a biscuit packaging, get food from the pot and rice cooker, get food from the ref. So simple meal preparations that she can do. So why is it important? To make sure that they can feed themselves even if the caregiver will not give them food. So simple chores like throwing trash, shopping, like shopping, not shopping like independent to the in the mall or a grocery. Simple as going to the store for crackers and chocolates. So Stephanie cannot verbally communicate, but we were able to teach her how to bring a list to the store or use a card or bring the wrapper of what she wanted to buy from the store. Then with an allowed budget that we set from the storekeeper, because she's not allowed to like exceed that budget, and taught her to accept no as an answer if the budget is finished or it's gone already, so she cannot take anything from the store. Okay, so that's a lot of training because accepting no as an answer is really hard for Stephanie. So you may feel that this is unsafe, allowing her to go out of the house, but she will go out and go to the store. So might as well teach her. So maybe you can suggest that maybe the parent can just buy from the grocery, but Stephanie going to the store bring out her best smile. So her smile is priceless. So just meet halfway with her. We set the boundaries. Allow her to go to the store and get what she wanted from the store, but teach her the boundaries. Okay, we also taught her how to use a mobile phone because her mother is old already. She is at risk for falls, or she might have a stroke, or she might have any medical emergency. So we taught her how to use the mobile phone. There is this fast dial. She can just long press dial 1, and then the phone will call her sister. Of course, Stephanie cannot communicate, but the sister would know that it was Stephanie calling, and if she calls, there is an emergency at home and she needs to come home. So that could save her mother's life, right, in the future. Okay, maybe think about that, teaching your child how to respond in emergency situations. Okay, also community mobility. Sometimes she wanders off and will not come home. So we taught her how to go home from the barangay hall, from the public market, and she has an identification card with her name of parents, address, phone number, and details that she has Down syndrome and cannot verbally communicate. We also introduced her to the barangay officials, administration office of the nearby mall, and administration office of the public market. And it is this by doing that, you're being proactive because she might wander off and might not come home. Okay. And then also we also taught her how to take the public transportation from the market because the mom always bring her to the market. So at least ride the tricycle going back home in case she got lost. And then also teaching her how to identify what to do in case of fire, earthquake, and when there's an evacuation operation. So, next slide, please. Okay. Now, let's talk about Albert. What we did with Albert. Albert, he is talented. He knows how to play the guitar. He can play the drum. He can sing. He's actually part of the church choir, but he felt bullied. So he left the choir for a while. But he likes children. So we encourage him to volunteer at his church Sunday school as a teacher's aide. We made arrangements for him to allow him the opportunity, and he enjoyed it so much. Even if he's talented with music, he left the band for a while and enjoyed his new role as a volunteer. So let him explore, because at this time he's trying to figure out what he wanted to do. And then he also said that he wanted to be a waiter. So we explored other opportunities for him. We found an opening for an internship in the food service industry as a waiter. But after the OJT, he realized that he didn't like to be a waiter anymore. He finds it hard to take down notes and remember details. Then he found a new interest in mixing drinks and cooking. So then the mom found a test the school that will accept him to learn how to be a bartender. But I did not get an update after that, because they already discontinued therapy, and they are already ecstatic about enrolling. So finally he can get an opportunity. So for your adolescent with work opportunities, or you're trying to provide work for them or train them how to work, the effective method is place and train method. So meaning there should be an employment first, or an employer willing to give him the opportunity, then train that adult or adolescent how to do that job. So it should be placement first of the employment, and then train. Okay, for the next slide. Okay, he also has other issues, Albert. So he has problem with his bandmates. He felt bullied, but with our correspondence with the group, it is more that they do not understand what autism is. And since it was not that obvious with Albert, so they don't really understand what's happening, why he reacts at times. So they did not understand how different he is. So we educated them about autism, how they can support him, basically demystifying what autism is. And after that, he was encouraged to join the band again, and he said he doesn't feel bullied anymore. So possibly this group doesn't just really understand. So all we did was just advocating the accepting of differences among peers. So we were fortunate that this was a success story. For other people, it might not be the same case. Okay, so now he has friends again. At this stage, he may be exploring, his friends might be exploring alcohol. So because acceptance of peers is already important. Alcohol, cigarette. So it's more of teaching him how to make better choices in terms of leisure activities. Because if you let him hang out with friends, this could be a possibility. So be proactive, like teaching him how to make better choices. And you can use social stories as what Rafi presented a while ago, but change the topic into alcohol, cigarettes, or anything that you might not want them to explore, but maybe expose to them. Okay, and then we also taught him how to use social media, like who to add. You don't just add people because you like their photo or profile picture. And then how to use mobile devices. So where to use them and how to deal with strangers, because he lives in Ermita, Manila. So if he uses his cell phone out on the streets, someone might snatch the phone. So also, what to do when he's lost. So identifying safe strangers, people like policemen or security guard, because this young man would like to hang out with friends. We don't know. He might get lost, or his friends might, make fun of him. We still don't know. We maybe leave him somewhere else that he doesn't know how to go home to. So at least problem solve, or know what to do when he's lost. Because Ermita, Manila is not a safe place. I know you would agree, This explains why the mom is so scared to let him go because of their community, that the dangerous streets of Ermita, Manila. At that time, this was in 2008, 2009. Okay. Then we also taught him how to ride MRT, cross the street, all the practical skills. Because upon assessment, I found that he is highly trainable. So why not teach him? So in one way or another, he would go out and meet his friends outside. He might stow away. So just equip him. So if I've given a chance, I would add a fitness program for Albert also. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in short, this could be your guide when helping your adolescent transition to adulthood. So look at employment opportunities or post-secondary education, or maybe technical vocational skills training school if a BS degree might not be possible. So, and then living opportunities. So do you want your adolescent to be independent from you? For Filipinos, it's unlikely. I'm sure we will not let that happen, like living independently from us. But you have to think about who will take care of your adolescent with special needs or adult with special needs when you die. Okay, so that's the living arrangement. Okay, think about that. And then the financial and income needs, the opportunity to have friends and socialization, transportation, health and medical needs, especially if they develop other comorbid health problems. And then this is one thing that I'd like to bring up, especially for female. It's nice if they get to visit an OB-GYN, OB-GYNE, okay, at least once a year. Because, some sexual assaults are discovered after a checkup, or it's just for health reasons. So it's not about like you're paranoid, maybe your child was assaulted already sexually that you didn't know of. But yeah, I've seen that in some of the cases that I've handled before. And then legal and advocacy needs. Then Rafi will talk about the next slide. For Joe, what they did for Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Vanessa. So with Joe, with puberty and these physical and sexual changes, our boys tend to smell pretty bad. So a lot of the stuff we focused on was bathing and toileting, because friends and family expressed that Joe wasn't showering pretty often, kind of like once or twice a week. So what we talked about with Joe was how bathing is pretty important, not only for our mental health, but our physical health, and also then our social relationships with other people. Because if we're smelly and we're hanging around other people, they don't want to interact with us. But if we're clean and we have a good physical presentation, people will be more approachable and receptive, to our interactions. With toileting, so during this time, we really practice just like thorough cleanliness of after, going to the bathroom, but then specifically after masturbation, how we have to actually like clean ourselves. We can't just, use tissues. So with Joe, we talked about the proper steps to actually be thoroughly clean, so that, parents, once they would come into the bathroom, they would feel comfortable and not, be uncomfortable with what Joe had just done in the bathroom. So we worked a lot on toileting, but most specifically, how to clean up after ourselves, after we've had these urges and have relieved ourselves. Next slide. All right, so this one was pretty big for Joe. So with our management, Joe had a hard with health management and maintenance. Joe had a hard time kind of describing the differences between like a belly or tummy ache, feeling nauseous, and actually physical pain like a broken bone. So we did social stories and kind of talked about the factual symptoms and representations of those different sensations. So, if you're nauseous, you feel like you want to throw up, you feel dizzy, you don't want to move. If you just have an ache, it could be just like a cramp on the side. And then if you have a broken bone, that's a big type of pain, and you want to go see the doctor because it could be a broken bone or something more than that. In terms of community mobility, he learned how to take the bus routes within our city of San Francisco. So he actually memorized all the places he wanted to go to, and then which buses went to those places. And it was pretty fascinating. He has an incredible talent for memorization. So I remember, him writing it out and then memorizing the bus routes. And then he also learned how much money he needed for each of those bus routes. So each time he went out into the community, he had the right amount of money and some extra money too, just in case he wanted to spend when he went to these places. But he learned how to take the buses, which was pretty big for his independence. And after he learned how to do that, I actually saw a big change in his self-esteem and confidence, moving to like job seeking, which I'll talk about later. With our meal preparation and cleanup, he learned how to shop for groceries, learned how to follow a recipe. Parents would give him a list of which food and items they would need from the grocery store, and Joe would then go get it. And at first, I want to say that parents were always helping at the beginning initially. So they would see where Joe's level of independence was, and then as he started to get better at these tasks, the parents started to decrease their assistance, which was pretty hard for them because initially the parents wanted to do everything for Joe, but after education and showing them that Joe has the skills and capacity to do these tasks independently, it just opened up a door that, and it just opened up lots of things for this family and Joe that they never dreamed of, such as community college, which I'll also talk about. Communication. So much like Vanessa said, we learned how to use a cell phone to call and text and also navigate social media. Joe can spend now hours on social media, especially looking up clips of superheroes. So we also had to teach him how to have a balance between social media, what's productive using of the phone and what's not productive. Because Joe would spend hours on the phone after we taught him. So we had to teach him how to, use it responsibly. And with also with the communication, we also learned how to practice social skills with his family members, so aunts, uncles, cousins, and then with his friends. And then eventually we got to the point of actually practicing some social skills for how to make friends with girls that we potentially want to date or see as romantic partners. And so for that was a lot of fun because we got to pretend to go on dates, which was pretty cool. And so he learned how to navigate those social interactions because, with autism, those learning social skills and picking up on people's body cues is very hard. So we made lots of flashcards and social stories on what to do if a girl sitting in front of us is looking like this, or if they're, very smiling, and how to start conversations. So that was a lot of fun. With our safety and emergency response, we learned the numbers to the first responders, 911. And then we also learned the numbers to the police and fire department for situations that weren't very dangerous, but just needed to be addressed. So Joe told me about a time where he saw, I think, some car with a flat tire on the street, and he didn't know how to help the person. So what he did was he called the police, but not the 911. He called the other line and just called for help. And actually, the gentleman with the flat tire ended up thanking Joe. So that was a pretty sweet story to hear from him. But with the family, we also developed a plan that he carries in his wallet should anything happen. So if he gets lost, he can pull out the sheet from his wallet, and he has some steps he can follow and numbers to call. If he's, if he's having an episode of like a panic attack or whatnot, on that sheet, he also has a list of steps and numbers of who he can call. With our home establishment, the family set up a list of responsibilities and chores that Joe had to carry out as being part of the family. So when we're in a family, we all have responsibilities within that family, and each family's different. So for him, he had to do sweeping, mopping, cleaning windows, and vacuuming, and help dad with the garden. So those were his responsibilities and chores that he had to carry out at home, and which were great skills because it taught him a lot on, how to fix certain things around the home, like a simple toilet clog or a light bulb changed, because those skills can translate to independent living. So he found great enthusiasm in this because he started to see like, wow, I have the skills to kind of like live on my own, or at least with some supported assistance. Next slide. So much like the previous slides, again, you always want to be thinking about, will my child be able to identify what he or she wants for his or her future? Can they envision like having a job, or can they envision living on their own, or can they envision living with minimal assistance? Help them identify what they can do, not what they can't do. We always want to stress and emphasize the skills they have. Another thing you want to ask yourself is, oh my gosh, what do I want my child to be able to do when he's an adult? So although, as a child, academics are pretty important, as they grow up, maybe academic skills aren't as important as these life skills, which are far more important, because you can write all the things in the world, but that won't help you as an adult. Ultimately, being able to cook for yourself, or wash yourself, pay for your own things, or help with jobs, those are going to be more important than some of the academic skills we kind of stress our kids to do. Another big one that Vanessa's been saying is, who will look after my child when he or she is an adult? I think she made a great point of, even if they have siblings or family members, they may not take care of them as well as you will. So we want to prepare our kids or our teens to be able to live independently or with as much skills as they can, so that our siblings or our family members don't get burnt out and hire somebody who may not, be interested in helping us. Next slide. So again, going on with the topics of, which functional skills do they have and which functional skills do they need? Those are very important. And then establishing healthy habits. Like I said with Joe, once he learned how to do social media, we had to, re-educate him on how to have healthy habits and a balance with his phone. And also with computers, video games, and iPads. Media and technology in general can be very addicting to our young ones, especially to this generation. Ask ourselves, can our kids or our teens survive a day without assistance from others? The less assistance they can get, the more of our family members and those around us are going to be, pretty happy and enthusiastic to be with our kids, because they won't get burnt out. They'll know that when they go see Joe, they won't have to do these tasks for him because Joe can do it. And they might even include Joe in charge of some things like barbecues or whatnot. Friends is a big one. We as humans are social beings. We're not loners. And, it's proven that if we have, a certain amount of connections with not just our family members, but with friends, we live longer and have a more satisfying life. So we want to have friends and form relationships with others, not just our family members, but we want to have, peers with similar interests. And then another big one is, does my teen have potential for employment? It may not be full-on employment, but it can be some sort of apprenticeship, or they're volunteering or helping. That in itself is pretty big, and not everyone can say that, and so that's awesome when we can find employment for our teens. Next slide. So the things that we want to teach our teens moving into adulthood is, how to self-advocate, how to ask for certain things, especially if they're, trying to go to a job or a school. They need to learn how to advocate for their needs, I know we taught Joe how to, when he was applying for jobs, we taught Joe how to say, I can't, I'm not the best at interacting with people. So if I can help maybe stock vegetables, or if I could clean the floors, that would be a better job for me than if I was the cashier. So learning how to self-advocate is very important. Academics versus lifelong learning, how to time management, our health and physical care, our health management, safety skills, healthy leisure activities, hiking, walking, reading, painting, photography, learning how to use transportation and how to navigate our community. A big one is money management. So I know I've taught lots of my clients, especially my internships, how to count money and how to pay for things. The more they're independent in their financials, that's going to open a big opportunity for them to explore the community. And it's a great skill to have, especially to have financial literacy. How to socially interact, workplace readiness. So with Joe, we spent a lot of on-the-job training. So I would actually go with him to the ice cream shop, and we would learn how to clean our stations, how to restock ice cream. What do we do when a customer says, my order was a mistake? So that, I know that was a big one for us, was just the workplace readiness. And then lastly, our, occupational specific skills. If we want a certain job, what skills do we need for that job? And do we, and does my child or teen have the potential for those skills? And if they do, then we got to train them, because it's great. It's great for their independence. Next slide. So just to summarize, post-secondary education, are they moving on to some sort of community college? Doesn't have to be 4 years, but are they, seeking further academics? Are they finding a way to, live independently? Or are they going to go to assisted living, where it's not full-on independent, but they still have some assistance? Or are they seeking, employment or vocational? I know here in in the United States, we have programs where some of our teens have access to being able to receive job training, learning how to do resumes, how to do interviews. And then once they do get a job or a volunteer position, they get training for that kind of stuff. So it's pretty great if they can find those kinds of opportunities for them. Next slide. Next slide. So again, as we keep referring to this, just answer yourself, is my child attending the right school? We talked about finding the right fit. And it's okay if you have to switch schools. Do what's best for your child and for your family. Thinking about as teenagers, is his academic skill going to be useful for adulthood? What are other professional services we can seek? And are these services helping my child with the transition from school to adulthood, or from non-school settings? Thinking about services, what do I want to get from these services? And then really thinking about, am I spending my financial resources, our time and effort? Is it valuable, because time, our time and money is valuable. So we want to be seeking services that we know are going to benefit our teen and our family for the future. Next slide. So where do we start? So the biggest one is building our team. So, who is that? Your family members, aunts, uncles, brothers, siblings, our teachers, and the roles of each one. You and the teen are comfortable with, and who is willing to help you. Everyone should be willing to communicate, because this is a collaborative approach. We can't do this on our own. I definitely can't do it on my own without Joe's help, without his parents' help, and without his teachers' help. We want to gather as much information as we can. It includes your child's interests, abilities, likes, dislikes, achievements and needs, and strengths and areas of needs. And then develop a plan. This one's pretty big. So you want to really think of what is the ultimate goal in the long term, because that's going to outline what steps you need to take, what services you need, who else, what other people you need in your team. So having a plan means you have a direction, its goal, specific skill or ability, tasks to be completed, and somewhat of the person in charge. And then put the plan into action. And something that we need to realize is, if our plans change, that's totally okay. Plans always change. There's no one plan. There may be a plan A, but then there's plan B, C, D, E, F, G, all letters in the alphabet. Put the plan to action. If you need to change it, then change it. Kind of goes into number 5. And then for number 6, the exit meeting, the that's once all the goals are, are set and achieved, it's important to summarize the program, identify future plans, examples such as indicators that professional support is needed, any follow-ups that you need, when, planning for future problems and support services will be terminated. When you exit a meeting, you always want to think about, okay, the next meeting, what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? Next slide. So some of the teams will look like this. You'll have a special educator, you have an occupational therapist, speech therapist, maybe a physical therapist, a life or job coach, and then other allied professionals. These are all services to seek out when looking into the transition from school to non-school environment for your adolescent. You always want to get as many people on your team, especially, with the knowledge that they have, because everybody contributes and has different ideas. Yeah, we need as many brains as we can get in the room, the better. Next slide. And then to summarize what we said, team collaboration, always talking to one another, sharing ideas, planning is very important, and then documentation is very important because it's going to show, where you were to where you are now. And it's nice to have the documentation to, show, whether it's health insurance or people, what you have been doing has been working and what you've done to address any hiccups along the road. Next slide.
Okay, thank you, Rafi, for the wonderful input. So just to remind everyone that I've seen questions about their guide to transition planning. So you maybe take a screenshot of this slide. This is your guide. So you can categorize your goals to each area. And then for the next slide, this can help you identify the step-by-step per area. And then just to summarize, next slide, please identify what your child, next slide, okay. Then please identify what your child can and cannot do, set functional goals, and then have a collaborative team with you. It doesn't have to be all professionals. Your family members can be your team, and then come up with a plan, prepare with a plan, and then communicate among professionals if you have a team of professionals. But if you don't have, that's okay. Just communicate among your family members, try to problem solve with each other, and set up a plan. So that concludes our presentation, and we are now ready to answer your questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thank you both, Rafi and Van. And I just wanted to also reiterate a couple of things that you said, is that as a parent of a child also with special needs, and I do know that there's a lot of families who don't have access, that there's not just in the Philippines or in other, I know we have people from all around the world on the call, but the majority of the folks on the call are from the Philippines. And we do know that services can be very limited. And so definitely, as Vanessa indicated, leverage your family and friends to help you build that team. And there's a question that was brought up, which is what's leading me to this, is that somebody actually asked a question that they have a child who is low functioning and would probably never be able to receive employment. And how do you actually prepare them for that? And was just going to let you know that I also have a son that's very affected by his autism. And, he may not have the opportunity to be employed also. But one of the things that you can do is you can actually create employment with him. And never give up hope on any of your children, because you could be having them help you do things around the house that could make them feel like they have a job. So, you can teach them how to put the dishes away. You can teach them how to sort. You could teach them how to help you wash the clothes, putting clothes up. You could create a garden with them, and they could be helping you pour the water. If they love pour watering, then let them be the one that's part of their job. And then you could sell those vegetables or flowers or whatever you're planting in partnership with your son. Or even when you're not here, you can leave that with, whoever you're leaving him or her with, to do those things. If they like to eat pizza, maybe you make a small little store where you sell pizza, and they can help you, with the assembly of that. I think, don't ever underestimate, even if they need that one-to-one support, you or a family member could help them do that, and they could actually do employment with you, and you could create your own small little employment with them. So it's just something for you guys everybody to think about around that, because I think our kids can do more than what many of us sometimes, I think it's just one of those where they can do more than sometimes we can see. And when you start to push them, they actually can do it. So I've been able to see that firsthand with myself. And so to really emphasize the importance of that. And then we have another question here that I think that many people may also interested, is that the question is, I have a nonverbal ASD son who's so loving, but when he turned 11, his behaviors changed. He became irritable and he inflicted too much pain to himself and to his siblings. So it sounds like he's doing self-injurious behaviors. He's now 13 and a half years old, and he's struggling with behaviors. And I just don't know how long it will be like this, or what and how we should manage this. I'm going to take this question from a parent perspective, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lonnie, Rafi, and or Vanessa. I experienced this exact same thing. As soon as puberty started, which was at 11, we had the exact same scenario here. And it's not easy. And so I would highly recommend a couple of different things. The first one being is, seek medical help. You need to really talk with your doctors about this, because those who are nonverbal don't have the communication skills to be able to tell you often what they're feeling or how they're feeling. And they don't know how to actually handle all that pressure. And if many of us remember when we were going through puberty, it's not easy, right? And so that irritability could be just that they can't communicate, or that their body, and particularly those on the spectrum, their senses get completely out of whack, and the puberty makes it even worse. We actually ended up putting our son on medication, which totally leveled him out, and it has made it to where he's back to his super loving self, and we very rarely have behavioral issues. And the only time we do see behavioral issues is when he's sick. So it's just something for you to definitely think about. Any of you who are on the phone who are in that similar scenario, that it's definitely something that you should talk to your medical providers. And then I'll let others, weigh in if they have any other advice.
Okay, I'd like to add to that, especially for kids who are nonverbal. Yes, they cannot communicate, and sometimes the self-injurious behavior could be a way of communicating pain. So I have a kid before, he's definitely okay, and then he started to hit his head like really hard, and then there was, for months he was in doing that, and then one time he got fever and was hospitalized, and the doctor said, did your son not complain about pain, because this is painful? So then we started to realize that it was because of the tooth decay. He's having teeth pain or whatever. So the gums are hurting. So that's why he's been hitting his head really hard to counter the pain. He has no way of communicating that it's painful. So after the surgery, after all the tooth decay were removed, he's finally okay. No more self-injurious behavior. So it could be pain. So that's why it's very important to have a regular checkup with your doctor, have blood tests, because some of the kids that cannot communicate will definitely come up with ways to communicate that they are experiencing pain. So especially, it's not always about there's a sensory issue. Sometimes it's just pain. So Rafi, do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, just when puberty or any changes happen, and our kids are reacting, sometimes that is because our brain and body are trying to catch up. And so, during those little lulls, that's just the brain and body trying to work out what this new information and all these changes are happening in my body. So like Lisa and Vanessa said, try to find a doctor and try to see what that behavior is communicating.
Yes.
And then Lonnie's still on mute, but I know she's been looking at the questions and wondering if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do a couple of questions. And Vanessa, this one might be a good one for you because I know it's going to be different in the Philippines versus in the US. It's a question about when school for special needs students essentially ends. So in the US, we provide school-based services through transition and then up to the age of 22. But in the Philippines, the question is, our supervisor advised us 3 years ago that only up to 25 years old is sort of the limit for special education services, but then changed it last year to 24, but with no actual black and white, guideline or announcement made. So do you have the real guideline for when the service is done, school-based?
Sadly, I don't have any guideline with that. In my experience, it's really about, okay, hold on. Let's try the 25 years old because that's what I know. Because there's a directive to that. But the 24 years old, I'm not sure. Maybe there has been changes in the school district because we know that school districts can change some policies. So I don't have an answer for that. From what I know, it's 25 years old.
Okay, great. So let's see. This question has been asked a couple of times, and I think I can answer it by referring you to our previous webinars. So what can we do to know if our child has a special need? And what ages do you see sort of special needs or different learning needs emerge? So that is a topic that we discussed in, I believe, our maybe both sensory and fine motor a little bit webinars. So go ahead and go to Phoenixia Foundation's, either our website, our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, and view those webinars from previous weeks to get a little bit more information about motor milestones, understanding, when delays may occur and what that might indicate. Special needs take many different forms, right? So it really depends on sort of what your observations are in terms of, is it a motor delay? Is it a speech and language delay? Is it a learning difference? It's hard to know unless you're really, doing structured observations and assessments. But there's some tips in our previous webinars about that topic.
And you can find them also on our webpage. I made sure this past week that the links are there. So when you go to our webinar page, you'll be able to see all the links, and they'll link you to YouTube. So if you can't find them easily on YouTube, you can definitely go to our website.
One more set of questions that is coming up a lot, and this came up last week as well, are suggestions, tips, and efficacy of telemedicine or teletherapy or telehealth appointments. What can we do as parents or caregivers of special needs to help our kids in telehealth appointments? Or as teachers, what can we do to instruct our kids with telehealth? So that is a topic that's been requested now several times, and we don't have a webinar yet developed in order to address that topic, but since it's coming up repeatedly, we'd love to try to do that for you. So keep your eyes open.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's do one or two more questions. What? There was one that I said. Oh, yep. And Roth, there's one that I said that we would answer live. So do you want to go ahead and take the one that you're thinking of, and I'll find the other one?
Well, I don't know if I can speak so much to it, but I think this one would be good to answer. Is sexuality is one topic that is hard to talk about in the Philippines. So how do you deal with family members and school officials about this? Oh man, that's a pretty loaded discussion, not just in the Philippines, but I think in the world in general. I think we're in a new type of phase where people are expressing sexuality in different ways. And so I think everyone's learning at the same time how do we navigate this topic. And I think coming into the discussion with an open mind of expressing, my child has this area of need or concern, I think just opening the dialogue of saying that you need help and would like some guidance on that issue of sexuality, I think is a place to start. Vanessa, do you want to shine a little bit more light on that?
Sorry, in sexuality. Okay, this is how I deal with parents. I really make it to a point to talk about it. Like I bring it up, especially when the child is around 8 years old, 9 years old, because in my experience, I get to question them a lot for concerns, and some parents would hide the idea of being bothered about masturbation, or even female playing with their private parts, or worried about maybe the child was molested. And there are a lot of like unusual ways of addressing masturbation, like I've seen so far. So what I do now, I'm proactive about it. So you just have to make it part of your program. You have to make it part of your program, especially for the school. There should be really a topic on how to deal with privacy, how to where and not to touch those things. That should be included in the IEP or in the curriculum, or for any therapy for that matter. And parents also should be, I'm waking you parents up. Be open about it. Communicate to the teacher, to your therapist, your concerns about sexuality, so that we can do something about it. There's no use of hiding it or putting shade on it, because it's part of our natural growth and natural development. So we have to like help our adolescents to go through that experience, or to go through that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. Okay, let's do one more question that I mentioned I would help answer live. An attendee who is asking, and Lisa, you can definitely probably help here too. How can we address a teen student with seizures and intellectual disability in terms of functional activities? She's very dependent in all areas, and she has a lot of stiffness in her muscles, and her motor skills are delayed. So I asked the question back whether or not the student has access to any therapeutic programming or any therapeutic supports. But right now the child only has SPED classroom and then home environment. So Lisa, because you have some personal experience here too, I think you might be a good person to kick off this answer.
Yeah, I mean, I would not let the seizures stop you from letting your child continue to do things. I think you just have to make sure that you're doing them in a safe way, and that you continue to let them, one, enjoy the things that they love to enjoy. And particularly, I think because there's the stiffness or whatever, I mean, continue to work on motor planning, no matter what the age level is. Something that we've recently started, and Nathan is 17 and just started having seizures over the last year. We've started doing yoga, and I think movement and yoga is just, it's one of those great things. And even though he may not be able to get the poses right, it's helped. And then the same thing, he loves to swim, so we continue to let him do that, but he has to wear a life vest, which is unfortunate because he's an amazing swimmer, but we have to be safe about it. So I would just say that I would, one, make sure they're on their seizure meds, and you keep giving them when you're supposed to. And if they're not, make sure you're working with a really good pediatrician or doctor who can help you with the seizures. And so I think, again, don't let it hinder their development.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I would say the same, making sure that you have your medical team on board with you to help make sure that you're doing as much as you possibly can for the management of the seizures. And supervision is going to be really important for kids who have seizures because of safety. So I think one thing to go back to, and something that Lisa said earlier though too, you know, as dependent as a child is in all of her areas, you know, really do take time to notice what your child can do with some independence, or maybe the things that they're able to do the most independently, and really focus there to make a start on how to work with your student, right? So there are going to be things that they're able to do with maybe a little bit less support. And regardless of the support level, really keep that child active and doing as much as they can access. Even, you know, part of an activity is success on some days.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if there's things that they like to do where they're independent, let them continue to do that. And you know, one of the things that we have done is we've actually got a baby monitor back, so that again they can still have their you know, their own space. They can continue to do some things independently in their room, but yet, you know, you can still be watching them if you're in another room and still be able to hear if they start to seize. So just another thing to think about, and seeing if you can get access to a baby monitor if they still want some of their own space or privacy.
I just like to add, because I'm seeing a lot of they're telling us that they don't have access to therapy, the school doesn't provide for therapy. I'd like to encourage parents to, you know, take that leap of, you know, try to organize, find a sponsor, find an organization, a foundation, or a nearby clinic that can help your school have an assessment with an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech therapist, so that the program can be individualized, especially for someone who has motor problems or a child with cerebral palsy. So it's really hard for us to tell you right now here how to do stretching exercises, because we might, you know, we might say something that might bring harm to the child, because it's not a one size fits all recipe, right, Lisa, Lani, and Rapi? So what you can do now is you can reach out to the local therapy center that's near your school, and then maybe they can do a free clinic that they can do assessment and provide specific recommendations for your students and for your children. Yes, we know that some therapy centers would really charge, but you can actually help in terms of, you know, finding a sponsor for them, so that the therapist can have at least go to the center. So something like that. So because I've seen that, I've received a lot of letters from parents association, from teachers who would like to reach out, and then we try to find ways so that we can meet their needs. So you can actually do that. We don't have to depend on the budget of the SPED school, because we all know that they have limited budget, so they might not be able to get the professional help for us. So I hope that helps.
And who knows, maybe someday we could go on a road trip and be able to many more of you, but that we're not there yet. But we've been able to do some and quite a bit of outreach in the Davao Oriental area. And we would love eventually to be able to do more in the Philippines and other places around the world. So, but I would, you know, continue to, you know, reach out to your locals, and, you know, we, again, when we can, you know, come on ground there, we would love to be able to, you know, support more of you.
We would, and I think with that, we shall close the webinar, but please don't worry. We know that there are some outstanding questions, and we will try to answer as many of those as we can at the conclusion at, you know, some point post webinar. So look for those, and also go back and see what you might be able to find in the previous webinars as mentioned. And we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday for some more sensory motor topics. We're excited. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day, great
Have
evening.
a great day.
Great.
Where I need to end it.